Hello, welcome to the Diablo III podcast. We are online at diabloinkgamers.com. I am your host, Flux, and I'm joined on the show today by Neinball.
Guten Tag.
And by Xanth.
Hoy hoy.
It's like we're back in the D3 beta again, going the old school.
I know.
The old guard is back.
And we're all old and crotchety, and we're going to complain about all the changes in the game and you kids these days. And also, one of you's on my lawn, I'm pretty sure. You see that little bastard on my lawn, Xanth? He's on your lawn too, isn't he?
Speaking of old age, I actually just put up a no solicitors sign on my door. So don't come by and ring my doorbell because the sign says...
You have a pitchfork? Can you sit on your front porch with a pitchfork and stamp it angrily?
I might.
So Diablo 3, that's what this podcast's about, at least hypothetically.
Not anymore.
It used to be. Luckily, there's an edit button, so we can trim some of our wild World Cup ramblings, which were all my fault anyway. So much like when one of you guys dies, it's always Asmodeus' fault.
Oh, Neinball talk.
I guess I'm the most recent one to suffer from the curse of Oz.
Ironically, he was going to be on the podcast tonight, but he wasn't able to schedule today to get on it, so Neinball's filling in here. And in much the same way that he filled in for your hardcore characters, you're filling in him for him. Blah, that was just really well said. You're filling in for him on the podcast, so I guess your revenge is complete now.
Yes, it is complete. We've come full circle.
Okay, so PTR, patch 2.1 testing. You've been doing a lot of PTRing, Xanth. What have you been testing? Are you diving into greater rifts, legendary gems? Are you doing the exciting stuff, or just seeing what the new skill changes are?
A big thing I've been kind of looking at has been the greater rifts, especially with hardcore, because obviously the difficulty ramping up. What does that do in terms of your survivability, and how much can you possibly take, and is it really feasible for these larger levels to even complete them alive, as you see a lot of people on, at least in softcore, going the suicide route to kind of clear as much as they can and not really caring about living for too long. So greater rifts have been kind of my biggest priority. I wrote an article, I think a week or two back, about greater rifts and hardcore, and as a result, now that the legendary gems are in place, been trying to play with them too and just kind of enjoy it. I think one of the things that's really struck me is that they're very fun. I really enjoy greater rifts, but it's kind of this weird balance between wanting to be in a greater rift, but then never getting a key to even start one. So when you're actually doing a regular rift, they don't feel right because you want to be in a greater rift, and there's kind of a disparity between the two types of rifts right now that it feels kind of wonky a little. Like, I don't necessarily envision wanting to run a whole bunch of T1, T2 rifts because I'd rather do a greater rift. But maybe it's a balancing issue still. But so far so good. I've enjoyed the experience. Haven't lost any hardcore characters on the PTR, but I haven't pushed myself, I don't think, as much. I was doing it was like a level 22 rift with my Witch Doctor the other night, and didn't make the timer, but was able to clear it, and played around with upgrading a little bit on gems, which seems, I don't know how I feel about the whole upgrade system.
22 is like T4, T5 range, though, so
right.
That's getting up there.
Yeah, I mean, the Witch Doctor is pretty...
For hardcore, anyway.
Yeah, the Witch Doctor is pretty well geared. It's not very... the toughness could be improved a little bit, but I was content with where I was. I think the top of the leaderboards when I had last checked for hardcore, at least with a Witch Doctor, was like a 38, which seems pretty intense. And that was solo. I hadn't looked at any of the party ones, which probably should get them up there a little bit more.
And you have not PTR'd Neinball. You've been following the Greater Rift stuff, though? Are you curious about how they're going to run?
Yeah, and what Xanth just said is a common trend that I see when people are discussing the PTR is that those that really enjoy the greater rifts feel taxed by having to go back to the regular rifts. And it's almost like, are they going to become the new bounties? That just people don't like doing them anymore and feel that they're constrained by it, and they just want the ability to jump into a greater rift without anything else.
I think that's an excellent point, because a lot of times with bounties, at least in the current live version, I found myself doing bounties just strictly for the Rift Keys or to farm a ring of Royal Grandeur. And usually it's the only thing I walk away with are the Rift keys. But the purpose for bounties to me isn't for fun; it's to just get the keys for the rifts. And now the regular rifts are now the place to get the keys for the greater rifts, which then delegates them to bounty type status, which is kind of, I don't know, it just doesn't feel right.
Hmm.
So they added the Greater Rifts as like a bonus feature for fun, and it's going to become like the mandatory way to play, and everything else just leads up to that. It's like they added it for more variety, and then it's going to actually result in less variety.
Maybe. I mean, I think there is a definite feel to when you get to the end of a Greater Rift and you have that loot explosion, and at least, and maybe it's just for testing purposes, they're upping the drop rates, but I'm seeing 2 or 3 legendaries after clearing a really quick rift. That feels right to me, as opposed to sometimes when you go through a T2, T3 rift or whatever it happens to be, and you can walk away with nothing. So
One
suddenly,
question.
But except the memory.
Right.
Sorry for cutting you off there, but one question that I have, because I've only seen a couple people talk about it, so I don't really want to make a generalized opinion just on that. But they've seemed to have had the same drop chances, whether they're on tier 1 or tier 15 or tier 25. Is that something that you've noticed in your experience that you've been playing a lot more as well?
yeah, it seems like the first one, the first level one, I think I pulled up, because I've done a couple of them. I pulled up maybe 1 or 2 legendaries on the first one, at least in the Greater Rift string I did the other night. It was like 1 or 2 per average through each rift. Um, and sometimes I got 2 set drops in the same rift, which was awesome. Uh, Shame it's not live kind of thing. But yeah, it seems to be kind of consistent, which I would could imagine would be exploited, because you could easily probably farm up the level 1 keys by doing rifts and then just exploit that by repeatedly running level 1 to get the legendaries you want. But realistically, we don't have an economy or a trading game, so is it too bad if people exploit and just continuously run low level content? Not
Hmm.
really.
The very first Greater Rift I did, the level 1 one, which you finish in like 3 minutes, it just zoomed through it. I got 2 legendary drops, and one of them was the gloves of Akan set.
Nice.
From that's a level 1 rift, with level 1 Greater Rift, which is like below normal difficulty. I mean, you just fly through the thing. So who knows if that's how it's going to be in the final game, in the live version, or if they're going to make it scale up. But I mean, you can definitely get Torment only gear long before the equivalent of Torment level difficulty in a Rift,
Right.
in a Greater Rift
But I
anyway.
think that the big thing too is the inclusion of seasons, which is going to have everybody starting over, and they're going to be in a shorter duration. So is it going to be an awful thing if you're throwing loot at people for characters that are only going to last a minimal amount of time? I would rather have the opportunity to get more stuff over a shorter period than have to play the long game where you're continuously waiting for things to kind of come about, because you're still going to find yourself running into that you know period where you're just in a drought where you're not getting what you want, but at least you have continual opportunities to do so.
That actually is a fair point. That there, even though you don't have to play in a season in order to get into a greater rift, but having that ability to get the gear faster does make it better if you're trying to get that leaderboard and get to the tier 100 within the 3 month, 4 month, 6 month, 1 year, or however long they decide to make seasons last.
87 days, because it's quicker than a quarter.
Random, but I'll take it.
Well, that way you round up, and there's 3 days to get everything reset before the new one.
I would love to actually. You mentioned tier 100. I would love to actually see how high people can get without exploits, because all that we've seen thus far in terms of people reaching that tier 100 has been exploitive ways to actually get there. The one recently I posted was involving witch doctors, creating suicide characters that are summoning massive amount of their zombie dogs and everything, and then dying. Where
And they cleared the T100 rift while moving a half a screen from the starting point,
right,
getting all progress from their own pets dying. It's like that's a little bit of exploitive there.
right,
Ever so
They
slightly.
killed like 4 monsters on the entire rift. Hey, we finished. Yeah, I was watching that video and I'm like, how the hell do they pass 99 if they can't even get 3 seconds into 100?
right,
And I finally realized, oh, they're getting experience from their own pets dying. I'm like, well, that's bullshit.
right. And
But there you are.
it's kind of interesting to, and I mentioned this in the post, to see how inventive people have gotten which I think is going to happen when they go live. There's going to be something they don't catch that's going to allow people to skip this content pretty quickly. And you see the rewards are pretty great. I mean, the guy looted 1.6 billion gold, which, especially with seasons coming up and that complete wipe, 1.6 billion is a nice amount of gold for all the crafting you need to do, all the jewels you need to upgrade, and any other expense you might ever encounter. That would be nice. But
It also dropped a stack of 517 Death's Breaths.
Yeah.
So that covers that problem as well.
I was just going to say that with the seasons, it's going to be the whole Death's Breath issue all over again. They don't drop enough. We need more.
Well, they nerfed all the costs, so you don't need them for all your artisan upgrades the way that you did when ROS went live.
right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like you said a minute ago, Xanth, I mean, we all kind of assumed that when they put all those changes in the last patch, where they took off legendary materials and they lowered the crafting costs, and they lowered the Death Breath cost, that was all for seasons.
Right.
So people could start new characters and zoom them up, and you don't have to go farming, all these obscure legendary materials to make your good sets, and now you can just do rift once you get your RoRG.
Right. Which, when you think about, like, is the only reason to do a bounty for that ring at this point, aside from
and Rift Keys, yeah.
Is that the
Yeah,
only
Rift Keys.
reason?
There's a couple niche builds that can make use of Pride's Fall from Act 3.
Right.
And I guess
There's an Act 3? There's still an Act 3 in the game?
there is still an Act 3 in the game.
Why do you suppose that's there?
It's there for you to complete in order to unlock adventure mode in the season.
Well, they had to get tile sets for rifts from somewhere, right? So you might as well make those other stupid levels and you just need the tile sets. Although that's actually not the case anymore with the septic tanks they added in. What the hell are they called?
Cesspool.
Yeah, close enough. Yeah, the septic tanks is the Louisiana version of it.
Ooh.
And so that's actually a tile set that doesn't have a level with it. So I was asking about this on the last podcast, Neinball. We were joking about it, but why would they make an Act 5 or an Act 6 or an Act 7 in expansions when no one plays the acts? All people do are rifts, and all you need are tile sets. And you said they should just make it DLC and charge $20 for it, and we're good to go. And everyone hated you.
Yeah, and everybody hated me.
Aww.
But seriously, why? What? No one. If the whole game, the way it's set up now, all the incentives are to play Act 1 only and rifts, and then Neinball's one friend who wanted that weird hat you get in Act 3. I mean, why put all the effort into making a whole additional act and quests and NPC dialogues and all the artwork when no one plays the damn thing anyway? Except the one time when they rush through it so they can get to the adventure mode.
Because you have to have something to force people through to get to where they want to be.
They seem to be removing most of that in the game.
Yeah.
That and $40 for a cover price.
Have they stated at all whether or not when you start the new season, if you have to go through story mode? Or
I think they said no.
Yeah, I don't remember them saying anything about it, actually.
Because
Well, that's why you need Act 3. People actually have to play through it once. I bet they'll let you just jump right into it. They don't give a damn.
I could imagine that would get it a little bit frustrating for people to have to go back and do that all over again. Because I personally, after playing Adventure Mode, and this was something we said from doing the Reaper of Souls beta, after having Adventure Mode, going back to regular Diablo 3 felt wrong. It's kind of the same thing. If once Adventure Mode's been unlocked, if you have to go back to Story Mode, it's going to cause some commotion.
Well, all these people that don't play hardcore are going to be so shocked at having a level 1 character again.
And feeling,
They haven't had that since last July,
well,
except for their Crusader for like 5 minutes.
I think
I mean, having to do story mode as well on top of that would probably just kill them.
Right.
So.
I think Seasons has a great potential in that aspect. Maybe not so much for softcore, but maybe there might be some. But just the complete clean slate of everything is really appealing to me. No artisans, no stash, no, I'm still sitting on like 1 billion gold. Nothing to kind of make my start again and to kind of relive the first couple of days of regular Diablo 3 when everybody was starting out with no idea, no cash, just the drops that you're given. And now that we have this BOA system and it's fully implemented, what's it like to really start fresh and to really kind of make your mark with your character? And how does that work out? I guess I'm kind of really intrigued by that, especially for hardcore, because that 1 to 70 isn't a guarantee, especially when you have nothing to boost you. You don't have, friends who are already there that can power level you. You don't have a Hellfire Ring for, additional bonus.
You don't have 300 paragon points.
You don't have 300 paragon points. You don't have a marquee.
Don't have high level gems.
Right, yeah, you don't have a ruby to toss in your weapon and, all that other stuff. 1 to 70 is now a challenge again. Now, obviously, it gets trivialized a month or two down the road, but that to me seems pretty appealing.
It does have a certain rush to it, and that's one thing that I've been preaching about hardcore a lot on one of the other shows that I do, and a lot of people that have gone through and because of that have tried it out. They really enjoy that aspect, and it's like that's what seasons are going to be. That's people that have never played hardcore before and try it out for the first time. If you go through and just create a hardcore character and do it, that is what a season is going to be like. No artisans, no stash. You even have to buy. Stashes have individual rows that you have to buy. For those people that don't remember, because it's been so
10K
long.
a piece, yeah.
Exactly. Yep. It's like all these little things that add up, and vendors are these marvelous individuals that give you these amazing upgrades as you play through for the first time. So it's what it gives it a different perspective at looking at the game again. Kind of gives it a newer sheen to it.
I think from that maybe the seasons might be a gateway drug to hardcore.
Maybe
because people maybe today don't want to start over again with from losing they have 400 paragon points in softcore and 1 billion gold or whatever. But if it's a season, everybody's starting from scratch. Maybe they're like, hey, I've always wanted to try hardcore. Now I can do it, and I'll be in the same boat with everybody else. I won't be some asshole in my game with paragon 500 and 1 billion gold,
right?
AKA Xanth.
I'm in paragon like 300, but I do think that hardcore in and of itself is in a much better place, at least in Reaper of Souls, than what it was in the vanilla version of the game, because it seems like more people have been drawn into it. Like there's I feel like paragon points and the fact that you don't lose as much when you die now, even though the items can really hurt. I think that has brought an allure to hardcore where it took a little bit of the sting out of the death. That more people are more willing to try hardcore. I think honestly the seasons is going to be a little bit more hardcore in respect to what we have now, because there is no safety net anymore, and I think the people who have walked into hardcore under the impression of being able to get carried by people and that death is much more avoidable now. It's not going to be as much, at least in the first month or two of a season.
So welcome to Diablo 3 vanilla hardcore.
Right.
Yeah, and I mean, even just then, like Greater Rifts, like you were saying, you're going to get geared up pretty quickly with just the amazing drop rates that you get even in the lower tiers. You could take a new, fresh character in there, and complete like the first like 5 tiers or whatever. You could just sit and wait on the timer so you don't get kicked from like 1 to 7. You go from just 1 to 2,
right.
And gear yourself out in an evening by just doing 1 through 10 in sequence and collecting your 20 or 30 drops in one go.
Yeah.
Have you tried a Greater Rift with a sub-level 70 character, Xanth?
No.
I'm assuming that's possible. I haven't even thought to try it.
I was meaning to do it because I had a monk that was lower level when I first copied him over, and then I bumped him up to 70 on live. And I was just having one of those string of nights where I did like 10 rifts and didn't get a single key, and just didn't bother to kind of go back and try it. But then there was the wipe for the newer patch, and I copied over, and my monk was 70 at that point, so I didn't even bother to try it with another lower level. But
I'm wondering if you're like a level 10, like would that be, because you can really super over gear. You can do like high torments with low level characters just with gems and a couple of twinks, right?
Right.
So what if you could get in a Greater Rift? What if you're like on level 35 Greater Rift and your character's level 22 or something? You're gaining like 10 levels per rift. That could be a really interesting way to level up.
Yeah.
You'd obviously have to get the keys. It'd be tough to get the rift keys. You have to clear normal rifts to get those.
Right. Yeah,
that could be an interesting thing. I'm sure someone will try that when we get to seasons.
Yeah, somebody's got to have some idea on that, because I don't know how it would necessarily work, and if it would work, because you don't have like the little level number on it when you go in, like level 70 Greater Rift 3 or whatever it happens to be, at least that I remember.
Yeah, but obviously things scale to your character level.
True. It would
I mean,
be.
people like immediately got into greater rifts with low-level characters and then put in high-level characters and stomped them. And they Blizzard, that was like right when the PTR went live, and Blizzard patched that.
Yeah, that.
I mean, who knows? People. I mean, it's just a kind of a curiosity. People like to level up in weird ways.
Oh, well, the path of least resistance is usually the best one.
Is that game still popular? Oh, sorry, that's Path of Exile. I got the names confused. POLR. That's the expansion pack.
I like it.
So we've done greater rift stuff. I wanted to get in a little character discussion. Unless one of you guys has any last dying crucial points about the PTR stuff. Say no.
No.
Okay, good. Moving on. So we've talked about a little more deeper character discussion. Podcast I recorded a couple hours ago, which when we posted before this one, we did a lot about the wizard. Okay, we did. I say we. I sat there and listened and thought, I like turtles. And the two guests who are like super into wizards and we're discussing what builds work in T4 and T5 and how the wizard kind of tops out at T4's issues. I thought we'd talk about the monk a little bit here. I don't think any of us have played that much monk, but you wrote an article just recently, Xanth, about if monks are just useless tank bitches and can't actually kill on their own. I mean, not to paraphrase your article too profanely, but yeah. Why don't you tell us what that article was about and what your opinions are and why you're wrong?
It was maybe, I don't know, a month and a half ago. I've been playing a witch doctor, and I've played a witch doctor since the beginning, and I love the class. And
since the beginning, I like that.
Right, you like that? I love the class, and I was with it in the hard times when it was extremely underpowered and there was nothing to do with it, but at least, hey, I had zombie bears, and now the Witch Doctor's on top, and it's great, but a small part of me really I kind of miss the underdog status. I kind of miss, like, not being extremely overpowered. And I was thinking, what I want to play, and kind of shifting to something else. I jumped into a Crusader. I really liked that. But one of the classes I really, really liked from Classic was the Monk. And I know, Flux, you played a Monk heavily too. And, we had many a good Monk discussion. So I'm like, hey, I have not played a Monk at all in Reapers of Souls. I've got my level 60 sitting there. Why don't I jump into them? Did the leveling process, got up to 70, and it really struck me that this class does not play the way I remember it. And it had been a long time since I had jumped into a monk, so I thought, maybe I'm just not playing it right. Maybe there's a build I'm not doing. Maybe I need to do some more research in terms of what I need to be kind of looking at. And then what I started to see and the reaction I was getting from a lot of other players and a lot of other forums is that this is a class that is severely underperforming everybody else. And my original thought was I've been playing a Witch Doctor too long and this class just seems bad by comparison, but it's really not the case. And the running joke is that a monk is just an additional follower that everybody in the party gets. The guy who gets to put an exploding palm and watch things blow up, but actually do next to nothing in a party. And that's really what the article was about. The MVP for the Monk forums put together a very detailed critique about the problems with the class. And to be honest, we could probably spend the next half an hour detailing every little thing that he wrote and all the issues there, but suffice it to say it's numerous because the class just doesn't perform nearly as well as what the other classes are doing, and it really is in need of an overhaul, and one that hasn't really happened. I think back to the Witch Doctor, a long time ago that was calling for something to happen, and they took a look at the class, they rebalanced it, they messed with some spells, and they basically gave the Witch Doctor its own patch, and it turned out great, and we can see the results at the end here now. I think that's really what needs to happen with the monk for it to kind of move forward and to do something, because right now it's just it feels like a watered down Crusader who doesn't do as much.
Do you have a 9 thought ball? I mean a thought 9 ball?
I really have not touched my monks since Classic. I've kept an eye on like some of the changes and some of the complaints, and I think I don't really have anything else to add from there. Their one thing that they could contribute in Tier 6 was just they were there for support. They buffed all of their party members, and then with Exploding Palm, they were able to add competitive damage through everyone else killing mobs while they exploded from the Exploding Palm debuff. And now that has been removed without any type of real compensation in terms of damage. There was no real buffs to any of their spirit spenders, which was one of the problems that monks have had since Classic. Because in Classic it was just Sweeping Wind and Fist of Thunder, because everything else was pointless to use. Wave of Light didn't do enough damage for how much it costed, and even though it's been buffed time and time and time again, they're just afraid to make it anything significant to make it worth the time to use the skill. And that's still a problem that they have now. It's like, why use anything besides generators? Because your other abilities cost too much, so you can only use them at most like 3 times in a row, and it's just not worth it in terms of the damage that they put out. We can just sit here and use a generator or buff the rest of the team's damage, and that's all that they get taken for. They're like a little buff totem that follows people around, and that's it.
Yeah, it's a follower for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be useful. I mean, most games obviously used to play World of Warcraft, and there are characters who are just tanks and just healers and just, you have party roles.
Mm-hmm.
But that's never been the way of the Diablo game. People want all the classes to be super powerful killers and to be able to stand on their own and do stuff. And when one of the classes, or 2 or 3 or 4 of them sometimes, can't do that, or if one is so good that, obviously the Barbarian was just ridiculously OP for much of Diablo III Vanilla, and every other class kind of looked up to that. I remember we were joking about the passives one time on the podcast, Neinball. We were both playing monks, and it's like, there are like 7 barbarian passives better than any monk passive. Like we would trade all 3 of mine for like brawler, just these like 4th or 5th best barb passive were better than anything the monk had.
Yeah, exactly. Like brawler, which was a skill that none of the barbarians took, and it was better than any of the monk passives.
And the monk still doesn't really have any. There's one new damage passive finally in the new patch, but there's still just sort of this lack of. And obviously, the whole one with everything nerf was a big topic of discussion weeks ago. I don't know if we want to get into that at this point, but other things have been changed. Right. What the main conversation was in the previous podcast, talking about like the really high level, Torment 6 kind of stuff, or else the greater rifts that are even higher levels than that, is currently the best class is the Witch Doctor, because you have lots of pets that run around and just nuke things, and you can kind of run and stay out of trouble. Demon Hunters are also really strong if you have the quiver that gives you additional sentries, because then you can drop sentries and just run around. And the problem at the really high torment levels and in higher up is you can't tank stuff. Toughness doesn't scale up enough, which is really the problem with the monk, because you don't, the Crusader can be mobile and keep in his Arcan form forever. What the hell's the word?
Arcane,
whatever. I'm thinking Wizard Arcane form. Mm-hmm. There's the set for the Crusader that gives you basically permanent to that, and people can use that and run around with CDR stuff and cast spells a lot and keep alive. And the problem with the monk is you don't have anything that does that sort of effect, and you can't tank on super high torment levels because there's not enough toughness. And so it seems like the monk requires a playstyle that doesn't function at that high level, where you don't have the toughness or the DPS. And so you can do super toughness and be a tank, but you're sacrificing all your DPS, and then you're just a follower for everybody else. So
right. Well, I think it brings in the question of melee in these greater rifts, and you mentioned toughness scaling, and we have large HP on these monsters, and you have large damage coming in, and with most of the melee classes, you've got to be close to hit them. So it shouldn't be too surprising to see these classes that don't have to take a few hits doing much better in greater rifts because they're out of harm's way. But when you're a class that has to be close to do damage, you're kind of screwed in a greater rift situation, or even in a higher torment situation. And then when you add on that class can't do much damage to begin with, then they're in a problematic situation.
Yeah, the problem is that you have to stand still to hit things, and you have to actually hit them. Other classes have all these AoE, just sort of dump it in, and it just goes.
Right.
Or you cast a sentry and it just shoots for you, or you have minions that kill things for you. And if you're a class like the monk currently, who doesn't have a super powerful, pet of some sort, and doesn't have like massive AoE DOT stuff, it just, I mean, it isn't like it's an insurmountable problem. It's just that Blizzard has to find ways to balance characters who can actually stand still versus ones who can just run around and kill things from a distance.
Right.
You want to jump in there, Neinball?
Oh, I mean that kind of comes down to just, I guess it's one of the problems that with like the Torment 6 scaling as well as the higher end tiers in the Greater Rifts is just the only thing that they've done to add difficulty is increase monster HP and damage, and that's it.
How much did they increase it by, Neinball?
They
doubled it. Come on, dude.
You got me. But yeah, it's if that's the only way that they have to increase difficulty, it's going to come to a point where flaws like the monk that plague the monk are going to make themselves very well known, because those little nuances like between like something that has 97% damage reduction, something that has 98% damage reduction is huge. Even though it's 1%, you're taking 30% less damage. When you
it's 1% of a billion, so yeah, it's a big number.
It's huge, and that those little inconsistencies when you're dealing with that much damage are just blatant. When beforehand it's like, oh well, it's fine, they're within 0.5% of one another, and then you take it to tier 100, and it's like, oh okay, now that's the problem. So there's something that they have to do besides just toughness and damage, and maybe I don't know what it would be, adding on give elites another affix, to give them like newer different affixes, change up the AI, how it functions, or something that I talked about previously is they had this idea when they first announced tiered rifts is that they would be static. So that way it'd be a good measure and you could actually practice for the rifts. And so that each individual tier was static. It had the same monsters, the same layout and such. And so that way the actual difficulty is known. If they did that, instead of having it go through and be random on every single tier that you go through, they could specifically pull in certain monster types or certain monster combinations with certain abilities to give an added depth of difficulty. And that, of course, would kind of pull into where, well, I need to keep this gear on me, or I need to go out of town and swap into this gear set for tier 73 because it's all frost, something along those lines. But it does allow you to kind of custom tailor what the difficulty of the different areas are without just scaling HP and damage. But that would also, of course, the flip side of that is that's a lot of development time because someone has to go through and handcraft every single level.
Yeah, I think random game is random at this point.
Mm-hmm.
They just keep making everything more and more random over time, and it's just like, I don't. But yeah, also, as you say, it would be incredibly difficult to custom craft an area that would be all hard for all characters. You could do stuff that was hard for one or the other.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing I was thinking about related to the monk stuff is there's so many monsters that have CC effects that crowd control stuff used to be a real problem early in the game, and we used to be like horrified of wallers and jailers and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so many items now that give you movement skills or ability to break snares or ability to run through wallers with Kool-Aid, or escape skill or movement skills, or invulnerability to specific elements with all these legendary amulets, that it seems like the monk and anybody who's going to stand still and tank still has to worry about that stuff, because you're in the middle of all these 14 arcane needles going around, right? or explode, or moltens, or frozens, or whatever. And the other classes that are more mobile are not only able to dodge tanking stuff, but also much more easily able to dodge other stuff, especially because they can break all the snares now. So I don't know, maybe they need additional, as part of like improving the toughness, give melee characters would somehow get an extra additional resistance or additional immunities to snares or something, or
so like they have the 30% base damage reduction, maybe like the 30% base CC reduction as well.
Yeah, or just, I don't know, legendary. The set property on their set includes immunity to fire damage or something like that. I mean, obviously that's a big bonus, but
right.
Just something that, I mean, if the problem is toughness, it seems like instead of, I guess you can look at changing the whole class, like 50% resistance instead of 30%, like you just said, Neinball, or else you can look at doing it through itemization, which they keep saying they want to do with making all the class sets really awesome. I don't know. Making video games is hard, though. That's the whole.
It
That's the
definitely
subtext here.
it definitely is not an easy solution, because that was actually one of the things that Druin's post that you mentioned earlier, Xanth, that was talking about the write-up and very intricately went through all of the monk's problems, went through, and he touched on that there is the Thousand Storms Remnant, which does help a little bit, but
Right.
it sucks because you have to go into one specific build in order to use it, and even then, like, the proc that does all of the damage has a 6-second internal cooldown that you cannot reduce in any way, shape, or form.
But if you add the Jawbreaker, which is the monk legendary fist, the cooldown, it doesn't take a charge if you're within 20 or 15 yards of your target. So like basically what you have is the equivalent of an epileptic seizure for the gameplay, because you have to be just zipping back and forth, and there's just been a lot of people who complain about that playstyle.
Yeah. And so that kind of runs into a similar issue if they tried to solve all classes through that. Then you're going to be stuck with, well, I have this 1 or 2 builds because I have to use this particular set. And then the way that they've been designing sets lately is you have to use all 6 pieces, or 5 pieces plus the Ring of Royal Grandeur, and you're, SOL if there's any other good items within any of those particular item slots, or even worse, there's 2 good items that you'd have to make a choice with your Ring of Royal Grandeur, with what you'd want to use for that particular build in order to make it, fun or appealing, if there's
Right.
a certain property that you wanted to use.
I was
Making hard choices. We don't want that in video
no.
games.
I was reading a
We should have
post.
everything shiny all the time.
Yeah. Well, I was reading a post uh, talking about the Crusader set in terms of how it's pretty well laid out, at least in terms of the bonuses, that it doesn't pigeonhole you to a set build. Like the bonus, obviously with, you can mess around with the cooldown for, Arcane Champion, um,
Mhm. Con.
Aracat's Champion, yeah. Or is it Akan or is it Akarat's Champion?
Yeah, there's too many similar ones. I
Yeah.
think it's
Oh, it's a
AKKHAN.
con set Akarat's champion.
Yeah, there it is. So you get the cooldown on Akarat's Champion, and then you can play with your build in terms of how you want it set up. If you're going the shotgun, or if you're a hammered in, because I'm just going to go D2 here. You're not pigeonholed to a set build, but when you look at like the monk with the 1,000 raiments, you are pigeonholed to strictly just dashing strike, and that's exactly it. If you have more, at least the set bonuses are not pigeonholing you to a build, then those decisions don't feel as forced, and you can kind of play around with the playstyle. Granted, you're always going to go with the one that's the most effective, but at least you can kind of have the option to experiment.
As the owner of an avian Neinball, you were obviously an expert in pigeonholing. So what do you think on that?
You know, I guess there's like
You have insight.
there's the varying degrees of what making something quote unquote viable, and if you can make a bunch of different set bonuses that have a bunch of different abilities that promote different play styles, and you can design it so all of them are fine on Torment 1, but then like I was
Yeah,
saying,
that's what
like
people were saying last spot. They're all pretty good up to about T3 or T4 even.
Yeah.
But it's when you get to T6, it really gets that's when the pigeonholes come out.
Exactly, and that's when just that the few percentage points is all that it takes to make or break a build, or make it efficient, or even worth your time. And that's really where the problem is going to come down to, is they've scaled up the HP and the damage in those higher difficulties so much that you have to min-max to the fullest degree in order to actually be effective.
And the other problem is that all the incentives in the game are currently tied to higher difficulty levels.
Mm-hmm.
Gold find, magic find, legendary drop rates, etc. So there's all the incentives, all the way you improve your performance is by playing on higher difficulty levels. There's no more magic find gear where you can make sacrifices. So then it makes it really incumbent upon the developers to make multiple viable builds at the higher difficulties, and everyone wants to do T6 or do greater Rift 35 or 40 or whatever, because that's where the choices are. That's where the white women at, basically.
That's going to be where you actually have a decent chance of getting your legendary gems upgraded, which are the new thing. where
by the white woman, ironically enough.
there you go. But it's because you have the kind of, it seems to be, obviously it's not, I haven't seen anything like really confirming it, but it really seems to be from the little evidence that we've collected here that the greater rifts are just a flat drop chance from tier 1 to 100. So you get the same amount of items regardless of what you drop, but
You
the
get more
higher,
gold.
yeah, but and also the higher greater rift that you get, you're going to have the better chance of actually upgrading your legendary gem. Since whenever your rift run ends, so once you run out of the timer on one particular rift, the vendor will now come out and allow you to try and upgrade your legendary gem. Whereas, and the chance of it actually upgrading a level or multiple levels scales with what difficulty you ended at.
And there's a second power on all legendary gems, which unlocks at higher levels as well.
Yeah, which I think is you have to upgrade your gem to level 50 before the secondary proc comes in.
Yeah, if people missed the last podcast, we did about 5 or 10 minutes on those in the previous podcast, so I don't want to. We're skipping over it a little bit now, but we talked a lot about how legendary gems work and what they're doing and stuff in shiny, and plus Neinball's got like 25 or 30 of those on his monk right now, so he's an expert on the
jelly.
You got that one of those special 4-socket amulets, and you can just put them all on there, just bang 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 bang.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can clear Paragon, Greater Riftagon 100s. Okay, that's probably not true. So we need to wrap up pretty shortly here, guys. Any other topics? We kind of talk about why the monk is a horrible, useless character and should be removed from the game. Anybody played a barbarian within memory, or no one cares?
Mm-mm.
Next.
No,
I never even got my hardcore barbarian to 60.
I have one sitting at 70 on live, and obviously it's transferred over on the PTR, but I just really never got into that class. I probably spent more time on a Demon Hunter, a class that I originally really hated, than I have with a Barbarian.
Tragic. Actually, I played a fair amount in ROS. I was playing them on my US account a lot, and but I wasn't that high level with it. It was like my first character. I was playing that and a Demon Hunter somewhat. I played so much Demon Hunter in the beta that I wanted something different after the beta, so I did Barb a little. And it was kind of fun, but I was just, I was doing T1, T2. I very quickly found Ice Climbers, was my big lucky find with that class. Like, right after I got to level 70. And those are complete immunity to what? To Frozen and to all snares.
Yep.
Yeah.
And using that with the Barb and using Whirlwind would just almost felt like I was on cheat mode. Because I just, except for Wallers, everything else in the game I could just spin right through and immediately escape from. And it was like, oh, how am I ever going to die here? This is almost too easy. I felt like I was playing softcore, so I actually kind of quit playing him because it was too easy, and it was just felt silly. But that's the whole point of the end game. You want to get gear that's so easy it feels silly.
Right.
So, last thing, what are you looking for? Obviously, patch 2.1 is making lots of changes on the PTR and lots of buffs to skills. And other than monk overall fixes, Witch Doctor seems to be in a pretty good place. Everyone else wants to be as strong as the Witch Doctor. You've been playing Demon Hunter some Neinball, and the way the class is viable at the highest level is by dropping lots of extra sentries via, what is it, Eminem's rucksack? I forget what the quiver is, something like that. Dr. Dre's rucksack, I don't remember. It's not much more expensive though. The problem is if you get that item on the Apple, it costs 5 times as much. So if you're playing on a Mac, that is. You've seen that, Xanth, you have a Mac.
Oh,
anyway.
yeah.
But that's the play style, is you drop a bunch of sentries and then you run around in circles while they kill things. And that doesn't appeal to me. That's not my Demon Hunter style. I want to pew 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 things.
Yeah.
So how high up is your Demon Hunter Neinball, and have you seen that issue, and what do you think about the play style?
Well, my current Demon Hunter is now level 65. Thanks, Oz.
So you're almost there.
Yeah. But with that one, I think Tier 3, Torment 3 was really the highest that I ever really messed around with my Demon Hunter, because my playtime since Reaper launched has kind of dropped off, having as much time to dedicate to the game, unfortunately. But it seems, obviously they're able to solo Tier 6 with pretty decent efficiency, but the Marauders set kind of scales off with how big the HP gets in the higher tiered rifts. And so they actually start having problems that even though they can survive with no issue, they can't kill that quickly. And so the timer starts running out on them. So they think solo Demon Hunters are actually a little bit behind Witch Doctors in hardcore because of that. They can't kill as quickly because there's just that you have to run around and let your sentries just sit there and shoot things, and you don't really do too much yourself. And so they're kind of coming up with things that they could do for the higher tournament difficulties to get more active damage out than besides just the Marauders. And so I think it's some of the ones have been what's the old set, Natalia's set, and pretty much like with the changes to that set piece is like permanent Reign of Vengeance.
It is. It takes 1 second off the cooldown every demon you kill.
Yeah, I think it's no longer tied to demons. I think it's just now it's just any mob.
Well, that would probably help. Not that many demons around.
Yeah.
Outside of family reunions, anyway.
Yeah, and then it will also, you don't have to kill it. It's not something that you have to kill with it was the change that within this patch, it's not just your kills when you get the killing blow, but also assists. So as long as you attack the mob once and it dies, it will remove the cooldown. So that changed the functionality of this. It didn't change the functionality of the set. It just improved the set bonus itself, and then also increased it to 2 seconds instead of 1 second. And so you just run around and you have, I think, I can't remember the one particular skill, but there's the one that follows you around. Instead of having this, you can either set at the area or a smaller area that will just constantly retarget on the enemies.
Yeah, aka the one that has fire damage.
Mm-hmm.
Given that it's a demon hunter. But yeah, actually I'm not sure it is fire damage. I could be wrong. But generally that's how it's gone with the class. Like, hey, fire damage. Oh, I need this. I need this, and I need this. So is that... I mean, I guess it's nice to have more than that. So then you can have your sentries and you can have Reign of Vengeance that goes along forever. But it's still not really a pew-pew. They're both AoE, DOT stuff, right?
Oh,
where is the pew-pew? Bring me pew-pew.
Yeah, I mean, with the Natalia's, that's just with the Natalia's set bonus, it's passive damage that you have going on in the background. You still have to contribute. You still have to be attacking. Because it's not like the sentry. Yeah, it's not like the sentry build where it will actually kill everything for you. Yeah, you still actually have to do something.
Well, I'm sure they'll change that in the patch. We can't actually having to do things unless you're a monk. Blizzard hates monks. Is it monks they hate now? I always forget.
Yeah, I think so.
There's always one class.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, any final thoughts, guys? We're rambling here a little. At least I am.
Obviously, we sign off with moves. Have either of you got the Cow Rift yet?
I have not gotten it since live. I got it.
Whimsyshire since live.
I've got it at BlizzCon, and then I got it in the beta, but I've not gotten it on live.
At BlizzCon, I thought they were just random cows in some of the rifts. I didn't think it was the whole Lord of Bells meetup thing.
You were sitting right next to me when I got it.
I remember I got them too. I just don't recall it being a whole special thing. I thought they were just tossed in with other monsters.
No, and yeah, the in that one it wasn't a Rift Guardian, but the Princess of Bells was in that particular level, and it was just nothing but cows.
I've done a myriad of rifts, and I've yet to encounter it. It feels like it doesn't exist.
Maybe it doesn't. Maybe it's just a lie, like the Diablo 1 secret cow level. It was so secret it didn't exist.
Have you done the Goblin level yet?
The Greed's portal?
Yeah.
I have not, no.
Yeah, I have not done PTR enough to get that.
That I can actually say I was able to get. I just farmed Act 1, the Damp Cellar bounty, because if you well, not even the bounty, but if in that area, if you go to one of the cellars, there's always a goblin that spawns, or it's like a 1 in 3 chance. So I farmed that for, I don't know, like a half an hour, and after killing like maybe 10 goblins, the portal finally opened up, and I was able to go in. And I can definitely say it was a cool experience. All the gold just littering from the sky and just killing goblins left and right, and then the huge chest at the end. It was pretty fun, and I think, again, for seasons, another chance to build up gold really quickly and maybe get some decent gear out of it. I think it's a nice inclusion.
What difficulty did you play, and how much gold did you get?
I think I was on Torment 1, and it was, I wasn't keeping too much track of the amount, but I think it was like 30 or 40 million.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that was around there. Nothing exuberant like 1.6 billion of a greater rift, but still pretty good, especially considering with the season wipe you'll have 0 gold.
Mm-hmm.
Exuberant and exorbitant as well.
Yes.
The one that we had a video posted of it when that was the first day, I think I was on T3, and I added up the gold that he got, which is easy because you get those counters on the bottom right of the screen when you get a bunch of gold now. And it was somewhere around 101 million. I think it was on T3. So there's gold to be had. There's gold in them there valleys.
And I wonder if gold find plays a factor into it as well, because I have like 0 gold find on my character.
Yeah, I'm sure. Well, I mean, it has to, right? Because I mean, isn't that I think every gold drop?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, guys. Thanks for your time.
Yeah.
You've been listening to the Diablo 3 podcast. We are online at diablo8gamers.com and moo.
Moo, 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 moo.
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 Secret
Moo.
moo.
Moo. Moo. Moo. I'm pretty sure that the no solicitor sign just entices more people to come up there.
That's true.
It's like putting yourself on the no call number, right? And suddenly every telemarketer in the world's got a bullseye on you.
Yeah, we have like 3 no solicitor signs up at my store, and they don't even care. They just walk right in. Hi, would you like to buy some pies?
Do you think they know what solicitors means?
Probably not.
I mean, it's a big word.
Yeah, it is.
That's like a tweet and a half right there. So the reading comprehension of modern humans is getting lower by the minute. So that was Xanth and I's intro conversation for 10 minutes, bitching about kids these days.
And you won't ever hear it.
But moving on to actual podcast material, or not. So I have to do my World Cup joke though. So World Cup final was today, and Germany beat, I don't know, Switzerland or whoever.
Argentina.
And yeah, them too. And it was exciting, and you watched it Neinball. You enjoyed every minute of it, right? No, you didn't see a second of it.
Sure. Yeah, let's go with
I
that.
didn't see it. And you were actually out. You actually went to a bar, Xanth, to watch. Did you have German beer or what?
Absolutely. I've been a Germany supporter since as long as I can remember. So this was a good day.
You've been a Germany fan since the Nuremberg rallies.
Oh.
No, we shouldn't go there. I saw it was the finals today, and I was actually surprised. I wouldn't. Maybe you shared this with me, Neinball. I wasn't aware they kept playing once the U.S. team lost. I thought they just quit then, because every other country on Earth's like, oh, we beat the U.S., we might as well just quit. Our little hopes and dreams have been fulfilled.
Surprisingly,
but apparently they keep playing even without the U.S. there. But did you realize that, Neinball?
Yeah, I was actually rooting for the Netherlands because I have a lot of family that lives over there. So I was then rooting for Germany to beat Argentina because they're the ones that knocked out the Dutch.
I have no idea if that's true or not, but we'll just go with it.
It is.
So I went from rooting from the Dutch to rooting for the Deutsch.
I kind of root for Mexico in it, actually, because they seem to really, really care. And I used to when I lived in San Diego, I used to work at the stadium a lot, and they would have like Mexican national team exhibition games, which would get like 10 times the crowd of a U.S. soccer team exhibition game, or 10 times the crowd of the Padres, as it turned out usually. But ironically, the Padres being the American baseball team, even though they have a Padres for a name, I guess coming on the fathers would have been kind of dopey. But anyway, it would be like I would get like the worst splitting headache walking around selling cotton candy at this thing or something. And it would be like 4 hours of people blowing horns and swinging noisemakers and just sitting in the aisles and just screaming. But they really seem to care. It's like it's really important to them. And I always kind of feel bad for Mexico because like all the problems in their country are totally due to like America's insatiable appetite for narcotics and sub-minimum wage labor. So like I kind of figure that like we owe them or something. But apparently they did well in the qualifying or whatever the first round is called, and then they immediately got wiped out or hosed or probably got screwed in a bad call.
Yeah, they had to play. Who did they play? It doesn't matter. It's Mexico. Germany's the one who won.
Exactly. So there's our World Cup, and all our international listeners are now horrified because they actually care about this. Oh, apparently you guys care as well. So
didn't they get knocked out by Germany?
No. Germany played.
No, that was.
Oh
Poland,
no, they were knocked out by the Netherlands.
Yeah.
It was one of the Benelux teams.
Yep.
Yes. Okay, moving on.